Peace, peace. This is Brother Faheem, and you are now tuned into the Lead with Logic podcast. You know the vibes. Peace, peace, peace. What's going on, good people? I am your most gracious host, Brother Faheem, and you are now tuned in to another episode of the Lead with Logic podcast. Hey, welcome back, welcome back. Listen, life moves at such a fast and ultra magnetic pace. I always try to keep my boots laced so that I can always be in a position to win the race. Yeah, man, we're almost at the end of February, the fastest month, coincidentally, Black History Month. And wow, it's been going fast. This month is one of those months where it's an eye awakener, right? It reminds people that, man, we are almost into the spring, right? We are almost into the spring. And that means once we get into that summer, the year's halfway over and then we'll start this thing over again. It really gives you a new perspective on time. But nonetheless, here we are. Here we are. And again, what are we known for as a Black American, right? You know, February is basically, you have the holiday Valentine's Day. If you engage yourself in that, if you celebrate it, I know it's mainstream culture. Most people are celebrating that Valentine's. So that's the thing that's going on. You got the chocolates, you got the sweets, you got all the good uh stores selling all that stuff. Then you have the Black History celebrations, right? You see people with the outpouring of Black History Month pride. You see the movies on Max, on BET and BET Plus, right? You see Malcolm X and all these good things. You see it, Black culture being made public, right? You see these things being open for all to gauge and also to participate in. So, but what don't we see, right? Black history is something that, and I think in my last build, we discussed, how Black History Month began, right? As a day, then a week, and then ultimately a month. But it was supposed to be a time where we now celebrated the accomplishments all year round. We looked at something accumulative and discussed it and celebrated it. Now, we have done that, but how well have we done that? In one of my bills, maybe it was a couple of bills ago, I discussed how Black history is taught in the mainstream, right? And a lot of times it's bled into how we celebrate it in our homes. What do I mean by that? You know, when I was a kid growing up, the people that we learned about were Martin Luther King. We learned about Rosa Parks, and we learned about Malcolm X. We learned about George Washington Carver. Excuse me, all of my Peter Pan and Jiffy fans, Jiffy peanut butter. We learned about these guys, right? And it was redundant. We learned about the guy Percy. I forget his name. He was the first guy to shoot down the planes in Pearl Harbor, right? We learned about Thurgood Marshall, the first Supreme Court justice, the first Black man who was appointed to the Supreme Court. We learned about Jackie Robinson, right? Who was the first Afro American player to break into the MLB, the Major League Baseball. But we never really learned about people who were not contributing to Black culture and Black society solely, right? We didn't really we learn about Black excellence through the lens of Black integration and not Black autonomy, right? We don't learn about Black autonomy. We don't learn about Black excellence as it is manifested in separating from mainstream society and not wanting to be integrated and gain power within it. And there's nothing wrong with people who would now like to integrate in and change if that's what you aim to do. If your aim is to infiltrate the system and change it from within, I get it. I totally understand it, right? There are different roles, there are different positions, there are different purposes for everybody. Everybody's not an entrepreneur, everybody's not a 9 to 5er, everybody's not a farmer, right? Everybody's not a technical person. However, but Oftentimes in the mainstream, what we find is we find people now, peace, peace, peace. Oftentimes in the mainstream, what's going on? What's going on? I appreciate you, Gemini girl. Oftentimes in the mainstream, what we find is those people, that black excellence, it has to be filtered through a lens that is black integration. And so what that does is it teaches our children, or it plants this seed in our children, that to be great, we have to always be contributing to other than our own society, right? When I go to my kids' school, the people that they have on the walls, the people that I see they have done projects on, it's entertainers, right? It's people who are athletes, right? And even if it might be an inventor, even if it might be a person who created something, it always would go back to how it benefited the mainstream society, the mainstream culture, the white society. I'm saying to myself, wow, welcome, welcome, y'all. Welcome, you three. Hey, come on in, man. Post something in the comment. If you got a question, you got a comment, make it. I'll respond. Let me say this as well. Uh, if you're on Facebook, please repost. Come on in. If you're on YouTube, send the link out. I think I'm gonna do that in a second. But man, lead with logic. It's a brand of saying in a podcast, right? Letting enlightenment and divinity win in this harsh level of God's infinite creation. And definitely not so much the God that we are taught lives beyond the skies. I'm talking about the God that lives when you look in the mirror and you look between your eyes, that God, right? If you guys will go to leadwithlogic7.com, please, I'm going to put it in the chat. Leadwithlogic7.com. That is where you can get some nice gear. We got hats. It's one of my favorite brims. We got hoodies. We got all of that great stuff going on. So you can get with the movement. It's always good to put some logic on your brain. You dig? And hey, every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, y'all come on here and we'll have a nice build. And I interview a lot of entrepreneurs from different product genres and also different industries. And so uh, you guys could benefit from them. You could patronize. A lot of black entrepreneurs that you guys patronize, right? So that you can see it might not be right now the bigger names, the more recognizable names doing huge and big things, but it's those unrecognizable brothers and sisters who are doing huge and phenomenal things. And so, yeah, man, y'all go ahead on and support. But when I go to the school and I look and I observe, I say, wow, these little brothers and sisters are writing about Tupac. They're writing about Michael Jackson. They're writing about uh, and they have good ones. They'll have one offs, right? They might have your Mary Bethune Cookman. They might have your Madam C.J. Walker. They might have your um, yeah, these are it's only people like that. You'll never see uh nation builders. But nonetheless, I see the athletes, I see the entertainers, and it kind of makes me cringe, right? It kind of makes me cringe. It makes me cringe because I ask myself, what did these people do to warrant being studied in this way, right? I understand Tupac was a poet. If you get into his roots and who the Panthers were, right? Even then, when he studied, it's not really brought to the front or emphasized that this was a child of the Panther movement, right? I would, they don't talk about the Panthers. I would respect it if they said, out of the Panther movement, you had people like Tupac Shakur, right? You had people like Money B, because Money B grew up. I saw an interview with Money B. He grew up with the Panthers as well, right? He was a Panther child as well. These were offspring of the Panthers, right? Or the Panthers were disciples of Malcolm, right? You know what I'm saying? They don't get into things that thorough and that deep, and I'm going somewhere with it. But yeah, we see entertainers. Recently, Donald Trump, what he did was he now created, it's gonna be, and I'm gonna look it up so we can look at it. Trump, he said he was going to contribute some kind of Black history. So I'm gonna pull it up for us to read. He's gonna have a memoriam, right? To honor Black History Month, right? Uh, and I thought to myself, oh wow, this is something else. You know, he's gonna have, he's gonna, it's different Black people who are going to be celebrated, right? And I'm listening and I'm like, I wonder who he's gonna emphasize. Who is he gonna put up for the young people to say, oh wow, this was a person who was a progenitor who carried on the ethnic group, right? This was a person who helped us build our nation. This was a person who contributed, right? And he had some people up there, right? I'm looking for it now. When I saw it, I was like, oh, okay. But it was much of the same, right? Uh, it was much of the same. I'm looking for, I'm looking for the, uh, I'm looking for the, he will put statues and information. Right, right. I'm saying to myself, why would Kobe Bryant go into a celebration of Black History Month? That's not to take away from anything our late great brother did because he accomplished a lot, right? Even in celebrating Kobe, we'll we'll celebrate the superficial, right? We'll celebrate the superficial. We'll celebrate his basketball accolades, right? We won't celebrate his Mamba mentality or what it took. That's what I celebrate him for, right? But really, how did Kobe? What did Kobe do to advance the Black nation, right? What did he do? What did he build solely for brothers and sisters, for Black brothers and sisters? What did he do, right? Did he create something? Uh, a lot of us don't like, and I'm looking for this. I'm just talking. A lot of us really have an issue with Tyler Perry, right? I've heard a lot of people come down hard on Tyler Perry, and I always find it funny. But Tyler Perry is creating Black jobs, right? Regardless of, I understand that his depiction of our people sometimes is less than desirable if you are a Black man, but you can't deny his business savvy uh, and what he's doing to create uh, Black employment, right? He's built a whole studio. Cat Williams, I talked about Cat Williams trying to do the same. What this will do is afford us the opportunity to get involved at every level, almost like what Bill Cosby did with the Cosby Show. Bill Cosby was, you know, the the cast was Black in front of the camera and behind the camera, everybody was Black. This afforded an opportunity to advance yourself. So when you look at what Black people have done, are we looking at these things, right, as contributions? Or are we looking at the typical things, right? How are we honoring? What message are we sending? Again, the same with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson will be, he's low hanging fruit, our late great brother. When we remember Michael Jackson, they won't talk about how he owned the Beatles catalog. They won't talk about how he owned half of Sony. They won't talk about how he was a shrewd businessman thinking about capitalizing before the Marvel universe, before these comic book movies. He had the idea, he had the wherewithal to say that is a major franchise, and whoever gets their hand on that can now become powerful and can create a real structure for Black people. That can be something that can be a catalyst to take Black people into or to revisit thriving. Right, we can really have something. That's not what will be emphasized when we talk about Michael. We'll talk about Thriller. We'll talk about Motown 25. We'll talk about him at Motown, but we won't talk about those potential aspects of his life and his intelligence that would now be a threat to capitalism or the mainstream society because he's now desiring to build a power base, right, through mass media. So that's what I'm saying about Kobe Bryant and these people who are now will be statues, these athletes now, you know. But again, I that's something that's common, right? That's something that's typical. I was in a I was in a conversation and I was listening and I said, I don't really expect a group of people other than our people to teach us history, the history of ourselves in a proper context. Nobody's going to do that because they haven't done it. And even some of us get it misconstrued when we try to do it, right? And so what am I saying? I'm saying that, brothers and sisters, if you are looking to the government, if you are looking to an entity that is outside of our group to teach us about ourselves, you are sadly mistaken. You are sadly mistaken. Really, it is up to every one of us to seek out, to search and find your history, get that knowledge of self, and then give it to the babies. That's on you. It's not on the school, right? I never did care about critical race theory. You never would find me hollering about, oh wow, they're trying to now revise history. They're trying to cut out the truth. And they are. That's the truth. They really are. But who cares? If you don't look to them to tell you who you are, you don't give a damn anyway. It's laughable, right? Uh a society that would still have them thinking that Abe Lincoln was the great emancipator. It would have them thinking that, or have you and I think that uh, Thanksgiving was about unity amongst Native Americans and pilgrims. Uh, that Santa Claus is real. Any society that would teach its citizens these uh, falsehoods, you really expect them to teach us something real about people who are powerful beyond measure, about people who were the original people, about people who were gods and are still uh, connected, the most connected to the Most High, and are in fact the human embodiment of the Most High, right? No, they're not going to do that at all. And so we shouldn't even expect it. But it's Black history nonetheless. Um, and I see now I want to show y'all because, like the sister said, she said that they were going to, you know, celebrate different athletes, and that's a cop out. That's really a cop out. Different athletes. Athletes are glorified workers, right? They have the potential to, you know, create a power base, right? When you look at examples like Magic Johnson, when you look at, and I'm just speaking about not their political ideologies. I'm talking about the revenue and the money that they accrue, right? Since they get those big salaries, they now have the money to reinvest, right? To open up opportunities for employment, to buy different teams, to really become powerful, right? Um, so people like that, they do have the potential, but you don't catch many athletes like a Muhammad Ali or like a John Carlos and Tommy Smith. Not many of them are willing to sacrifice their uh, field of expertise, right? What it is they do for their principles, right? They're not going to do that. But I wanted to come to you guys not for too long today, and I wanted to talk about the attack on Black excellence, right? What do you mean by that, Faheem? What is the attack on Black excellence? The attack on Black excellence is this. Oftentimes, like I've said earlier, in the mainstream, we don't learn about those people, places, or things, those nouns that were thriving, those Black towns like Tulsa, Oklahoma, those Black towns like Colfax, Louisiana, those Black towns like East St. Louis, right? We don't know those stories. We don't know the story of Rosewood. We don't. We don't get those stories. And it's vital that we teach the youngsters these things, right? It's just as important to teach them about Mansa Musa. It's just as important to teach them about Imhotep because it is it is an antidote, and I don't mean that academically. I mean that like almost medically. Yeah, it is a cure for what they are already in what's indoctrinated into their minds. Right? When you hear about they'll hear about Socrates and Plato. They'll hear about all of these ancient Greek philosophers. They'll hear about, the father of mathematics, and it'll all be European. It'll all be whitewashed, right? So it's necessary for them to get the actual and the true history of themselves, right? It's necessary to teach them Kemet is where chemistry came from. The root word of chemistry is Kemet, which is we understand that we know it to be Africa, right? Algebra. These are words from original people in the Middle East, right? Melanated people. So we created mathematics, we created science, right? We created spirituality. We created all these things. But it will never be taught in the mainstream because this would now go against everything that has been taught, everything that has been expelled, right? This would uh dispel it, right? This would uh detract from it. And so I wanted to just bring you a little something for you to take a notice to. I'm gonna speak real quick. And you know what? Let me do this as well while I'm doing this. Who is that? Is that Gemini girl? Who is that? Is it still Gemini girl there? Whoever you are, peace, peace be unto you. Peace, peace. Man, I'm wishing you nothing but uh knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, man. And you know, hopefully that you are having a wonderful, wonderful Monday. And thank you for being here. And please get some of your friends in here because you can never go wrong when you listening to the logical song, right? Lead with logic. I'm about to share this out because it's just one of us in here. But I appreciate y'all. Listen, if you I appreciate the one. If you like I say, if you say something, then I will most certainly respond. But yeah, I'm gonna get some more people, at least send out the what do you call it? I'm gonna send out some shares so that people can come in, right? So that people can come in and tune in. I see two people. Okay, what's up? What's up? Peace, peace, peace. Hawk, who goes there? Come through and say what's up. Come through and say what's up. Come through and say peace. It's all love. It is all love. But yeah, did you guys, while I'm sending these alerts out, did you guys have Black history in your homes when you were growing up? Did you have Black encyclopedias when you were growing up? Did you learn about Black people other than the ones that you were told about in school? And how were the ones that were sanitized? How did you now learn about them? Were they cleaned up? Were they, were all the misinformation you were given, was it now made righteous? Was the crooked made straight? Because the crooked was always made straight with me, right? It was always, and sometimes I had to. I'm thankful that I had to. I'm thankful that I had to do a lot of seeking and searching for myself because it helped me along the way. It helped me to continue to be open minded, as you all should be. You know, when you are consuming information, when you are researching information, you should have an open mind, right? You should have an open mind, and you should remember, or at least how I was taught, you should go in with an unbiased. Confirmation bias is when you have a belief. You start off with a belief, meaning it's not anything that you know to be true. It's what you believe or that what you think, right? You have a strong thought, right? Um, when you find things that would support your belief, that's confirmation bias. And then on the other polarity, you have cognitive dissonance. This is when you're you've discovered or you are given some information that goes against what you believe or what you know to be true, and you reject it for whatever reason. And so I was taught, as a good student, as a good researcher, as a person who was a seeker of truth, you can never have confirmation bias, and cognitive dissonance can never exist because it would only dilute your true scholarship. It would only dilute your grasp with reality. And you don't want that, because the better off, or the better grasp that you have on reality, the better understanding you will accrue and the better teacher you will be, because you can now help people, because people respond to truth, right? Whether or not they like it or not, it either causes you to respond in a manner where you get inspired, or it causes you to get vexed. Either way, it causes a response. But yeah, um, yeah, I was just always taught to, remember that when I'm doing my research, so that I can get accurate depiction. And anybody, when you go to college, they teach you that, right? They teach you analytical thought, uh, analytical research, so that you can bring the best product forward. That's really all it is. That's one of the great things, one of the most profound things about college that young people should get, because a lot of people don't think logically. A lot of people don't think critically. A lot of people don't lead with logic. You dig? And so it would only help. It would only help. Listen, welcome, welcome, welcome. Whoever it is, the two, I keep saying it right now. I'm just sending out alerts, and I'm going to get into these different black towns that we don't really hear about, right? These black towns that aren't spoken about in the school, and maybe they're not spoken about anywhere that you have been, right? Uh, but that question was, yeah, how do you now interpret? How do you now engage with, or how did you engage with Black history as a child, as a person that was coming up, right? Um, yeah, that's something interesting. Really, how did you engage in all information? One of the things, when it came out of the mouth of Furious Styles and Boys in the Hood when he asked Ricky and Trey. He said, "How'd you guys think you did?" And they were like, "All right." He said, "It's all good. That those tests are they're the only thing legit on them is the math and the science, right? Everything else is culturally biased." Absolutely. JB and RF, may I be pleased. Roberta Flack, I know who you talking about. Ice. Who's JB? I know Roberta Flack. Ice Cold. I know you talking about Roberta Flack, but I don't know who JB is. I'm trying to figure out who JB is. And I'm coming. I'm gonna show you guys in a quick second. Just let me send out these notifications. JB and Roberta Flack. Ice, you got to put on there who JB is. But nonetheless, yeah, peace. Welcome, welcome. Hey, kick back and stay for a while. We're gonna be going over some towns that you might have heard of. Peace, peace. Hey man, peace to the God. Hey man, what's going on, brother? Dr. Ghazi Muhammad. What's going on? That's my big brother, man. That is my big brother. I got much love for my big brother. Much love. Much love. I gotta have you on, Ghazi. I got to get you on, brother. I have to get you on here, man. I done had everybody on here except you. I gotta get you on, brother. And I'm hoping that you will. Hoping that you will. Butler, yeah. Jerry Butler, I think you want to say. Yep, Jerry Butler. That's right. Hopefully, Ghazi, man, you'll get your show back going. Hopefully you get your show back. Stevo said JB is James Brown. No, it's not James Brown, brother. It's Jerry Butler. James Brown been dead, brother. James Brown has been dead. He died a while ago. He died before Michael Jackson. But yeah, the brother was talking about Jerry Butler, who was a Chicagoan. I know exactly who he's talking about. But yeah, man, the attack on Black excellence, the bill. You know, when I was taught about Black history, and y'all give me a few more seconds, y'all come on in, listen. Like I always say, if you are on, it's hilarious. If you are on Facebook, please repost the space, send it to somebody, and tell them to come on through, right? If you are on YouTube, hey, listen, man, grab the link and share it out. Y'all come on in, man, because we getting ready to get into this. You know, uh, the way that we're taught, man, the way that Black history is taught to us, it is taught in a way that would only perpetuate capitalism, racism, and servitude, right? They highlight people who made advancements, but are we highlighting those people who made advancements in the areas of nation building? They don't talk about people who established towns, right? We don't talk about people who established their own religion, their own spiritual systems. These people are never talked about when we talk about celebrating Black history, and it becomes somewhat of a shame. Listen, even in Juneteenth, we don't discuss these things. These things aren't taught, maybe more so than Black History Month, because then you hear names, even names like Marcus Garvey, right? The Noble Drew Ali, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Father Allah. Uh, these are people who were building a nation. They were not concerned about integrating in, right? In fact, they dealt with separating from, because they understood, if you're, Marcus Garvey said this, and I'm still sending out these notifications, y'all. Y'all still like, please give me 2 more minutes. Marcus Garvey said, a people who depends now on another group of people for economic livelihood is a dead people. They're gonna die. And I'm paraphrasing, right? So he was letting you know right there, you should not be following behind any group of people. You should be accepting your own, being yourself, becoming reliable on yourself. These people are never taught to our babies. They're not. And I suspect many of us don't know about them. Many of us don't know about these people because when we now get information, it's new to us. Sometimes, like I said, we have cognitive dissonance. We reject it, um, or we simply are academically lackadaisical. We don't now look into it. Welcome, welcome. I see 6 of y'all. 6 is equality. I love that, right? Quality is accomplished by teaching knowledge and wisdom, right? Making it understood through understanding. Hey, um, and then there were 5. That's that power. But yeah. So you know, I wanted to bring some of these people or some of these things to the forefront. Yeah, and I think that's it. Here in Georgia, there's a Lake Lanier, right? And I saw a write up, I saw a clip of Lake Lanier, and they talked about how, it was different towns in America, y'all. Different towns in America. It was different towns in America. And in these towns, there were towns that were covered up. We all know about the interstates, right? We know about the interstates that went through Black cities and Black towns. I think we're familiar with that. But I saw this clip and it talked about how not only were interstates driven through Black towns, autonomous Black towns, they were also put at the bottom of different lakes. And this Lake Lanier, which is a lake, I want to say Usher's son, something happened to Usher's son, and I want to say it was at Lake Lanier, but Lake Lanier is built on a Black town. And there have been more deaths in that lake. And people now, right, they have this belief that the reason that people die, it becomes a urban legend or mythology. The reason that people die is because of all the deaths that happened, right? When that town was covered. The same with Central Park, right? Um, in the clip, it talked about how Central Park was another Black town that was bulldozed, right? That was destroyed, right? And so this is almost a precursor to gentrification, right? Except it was just destroyed. And so that clip, I remember thinking, damn, I wonder how many people realize, that we had towns. And what's beautiful about it, y'all, is it was right outside or right after one of the hardest times in our sojourn here in America, right? We didn't have technology that we have. We weren't in the information age, right? We couldn't get on the internet. So how did we do that? Isn't that is amazing to me that we were able to build. So I just wanted to share something with you guys, just kind of quick. Not just Tulsa not just Tulsa race massacres that devastated Black communities in Rosewood, Atlanta, and other American cities. So I'm gonna go. It says, let me see this. Y'all gotta forgive me. I'm getting my 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 vision is getting to be something. I think I'm gonna have to get some glasses. The Tulsa, Oklahoma race massacre is now, due to the work of scholars and historians, known as an act of terrorism. Several documentaries and news stories have told a story about the 1921 massacre that permanently altered the fate of a successful community known as a Black Wall Street. In May of 21, a 17-year-old white girl accused a black teenager of assault in downtown Tulsa, and white terrorism ensued. There have been countless reports, including from TulsaHistory.org, that 300 or more people were murdered in an act of bloody white terrorism. The media of the time downplayed the destruction of the prosperous community. The death toll was originally reported at 36. However, you don't have to be a forensic archaeologist to surmise that more than 36 people were killed. The Washington Post reports a team of forensic archaeologists who spent weeks using ground penetrating radar at 3 sites in the city announced Monday night they found anomalies consistent with mass graves that warrant further testing. The brutal massacre of 1921 in Black Wall Street was just one of many race massacres were commonplace and are blatantly and purposefully ignored in history books. Okay, I'm going to go back and say this: blatantly and purposely ignored in history books. This is why, brothers and sisters, I said it's up to you to filter what you teach the babies. It's up to you what you put in your head, because history books can be twisted, right? And we understand that we learn most of our history about self and world around self through the wickedest men that twisted history, right? We understand that. But what's really happening here? If you read in between the words, what we're talking about is not just an attack on random uh, or acts of one-time violence. These were, if you saw Rosewood, these were acts of violence that were calculated, premeditated, mostly based on envy, mostly based on jealousy, mostly based in fragility, right? White fragility and white anger, due to the excellence that was being manifested by the original brothers and sisters of these towns, right? And these brothers and sisters were totally autonomous and independent. They didn't give a damn about integrating in. One, because they couldn't integrate in, right? I think it's, well, before him, it was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It was the Noble Drew Ali that said separation, right? Specifically, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad: separation is the answer. Separate or suffer the consequences. Dr. Claude Anderson came back in Powernomics and said the same thing. Man, we got to separate. We have to get away and build our own, right? We have to build some power. This is not what's taught in the public school. We're not taught to build power. And they don't even mention these places, right? And why? Because if you mention these places, you have to, when people start to ask questions and go deeper, why would we be now kept from this? Because it took a level of genius, it took a level of expertise, but it took a level of self-confidence, right? And belief in self to say, hey, I don't need to be connected to that mainstream. We can create our own mainstream and we can live. And these are just a few examples of these let me see something, of these places. So, Colfax, Louisiana massacre, 1873. Despite some people claiming America was great for Black people, 7 years after the Civil War, Black men and women were being massacred in plain sight during the Reconstruction era. Reconstruction, I talked about what Reconstruction was. Reconstruction was right after the emancipation. The federal troops came into the South and they reconstructed the Southern climate and culture. And what you saw was a boom in Afro American towns. You saw a boom in Afro American participation in government. You saw all of these things, right? This is a time when you saw a lot of Black enclaves, because now we were getting involved in the mainstream, right, with the protection of the federal government. The Freedmen's Bank, all of these good things. HBCUs are being built. That's what the construction era. Look up the Reconstruction era. But One of the most horrific incidents that we know of was April 1873 in Colfax, Louisiana. Approximately 150 black men were murdered by white men with guns and cannons for trying to freely assemble at a courthouse. That's crazy. Sadly, the exact number of deaths is unknown because many black bodies were thrown into what was called the Red River. Wow. I'll say this. Whenever I read these things, it makes me feel two ways. It makes me sad because I think to myself, where was our warrior class? Where were the people who were uh, willing to, die? And I know there were. I'm not saying that there weren't any warriors, man. I don't want that to go out because there were. But man, I think why didn't we have a network through the country? Why didn't we have those brothers and sisters, men, women, and children who were willing to fight, right? For all of us. And then it makes me upset because when you fast forward till today and you see all of the hoopla that people like Puffy, that people like Bill Cosby, that are black celebrities who really have no political impact or influence, right? These pop culture icons, you see how critical people get. You see how thirsty people are for justice. When in history, nobody mourns for all of these lives in these towns lost. Nobody says, well, these people were absolutely devils and they were not brought to justice. There was no atonement for these acts. So all of a sudden, black brothers are now being made to be devils behind allegations most times, behind unfounded accusations. And it's crazy. That has not been our history, right? But we're reading whose history it has been. So I'm going to go through another one. Wilmington, North Carolina, right? The massacre, 1898. By 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina was a thriving area with a majority black population. There were also several black elected public officials, forcing whites to share power. Emphasis on share power. It's about power, y'all. It ain't about nothing else but power. Your economics will help you build power. Your economics, black economics equals black power. It's nothing about black power. Just saying that cliche, that's not it. If you're not willing to put some green power behind your black power, you should be quiet because black power alone don't keep the lights on. Um, However, the threat of Negro rule created illogical white racial resentment. The media frequently reported erroneously that white womanhood was threatened by black men. That was another issue, right? We understand. So, this is something going back to what I said a second ago on how these black men are being totally thrown up under the train, not the bus, the train. We understand that historically, the quickest way to discredit, to vilify, or get a black man killed, or black boy for that matter, right? Emmett Till, the little brother who was killed. I think his name was George Stinney. He was so small they had to put him on phone books or Bible to strap him into the electric chair to kill him, and then they came back and said he was innocent. We understand that the threat of the black seed entering into the white womb has always been a subject for emotional trauma for white people, right? In the past, historically, right? At least in this time, right? That was something that if you wanted to get a black man erased, just mention him dealing with, whether it was legitimate, whether it was in the shadows, just whistle that he had a relationship with a white woman and he would be killed, right? But it's illogical racial resentment, you know. Uh, the media frequently reported erroneously that white womanhood was threatened by black men. A Wilmington newspaper printed a speech by a Georgia feminist, wow, that read, if it requires lynching to protect women's dearest possession from ravening drunken human beast, then I say lynch 1,000 Negroes a week if it is necessary. The only difference between what this feminist said in 1898 and 2025 is that now, they're not doing it in the streets, right? They're not using brute force. They're using accusations, they're using allegations, they're using distorted media, right? They're using an erroneous judicial system that adds to, takes away, right? From what is truthful, from what is freedom, justice, and equality, right? But we're still seeing the same thing. And it's still from a lot of the feminists, right? Some black feminists feel the same way, maybe not as harsh of words, but absolutely some, not all, but many have the same sentiment. By the election of 1898, black men were prevented from voting to push out the black elected officials, but the white supremacists could not stop the economic power. The white supremacists could not stop the economic power that blacks had already created. Therefore, they destroyed Black Wilmington with terrorism. That is a trend, brothers and sisters. I'm going to say this. The white supremacists could not stop the economic power that blacks had already created. Therefore, they destroyed Black Wilmington with terrorism. That's why I said it made me sad, because what this teaches us, any organization, any black organization that is serious about power and protecting it and preserving it, you will have a military force. In South Africa, do you know? Go do your research. The ANC, the African National Congress, they had a military wing. They had an armed wing. They were blowing up state buildings. They were protecting themselves. This was common. So listen, if we are to build for ourselves, brothers and sisters, I'm simply saying this. In the past, right, we see that terrorism, we see that. You got something, baby. In the past, we've seen how white resentment, right, has and jealousy has caused uh, black towns, black enclaves, black citadels of power to be destroyed. Brothers and sisters, you may not like, or you might have not agreed with the in fact, right? You might not have agreed with the Black Panthers. Many of us were not back in those days, so we can kind of, they're abstract now. They're not right with us, right? So now you can kind of romanticize. You can be like, oh yeah, I would have been down with them. Would we though? Would we have the Deacons for Defense? It took special types of brothers and sisters, even the FOI. It takes special types of brothers and sisters to enlist and join up for the betterment of the collective. But that's what's necessary, though. Now, you might not want to join up with a collective, but you damn sure need to exercise your Second Amendment right. You need to learn how to shoot. You need to arm yourself, right? Because if you're going to build, what we've historically seen is there will be resentfulness. There will be people who will try to now use whatever means, whatever method of devilishment, right? Of technology to harm you and to destroy what you have constructed and erected. That's what this is saying. And we see it. We're still seeing it. It's just done through the media now. People are being destroyed. Puff Daddy is, I don't know if he's innocent, I don't know if he's guilty, but I know he deserves due process. And I know that that brother was trying to do something politically, and I know he was trying to do something economically that could have created a lot of power. You good. You good. You can have some. Yep. Put it in the bowl. You got it. No, just the cinnamon. But we know that he was doing something that could have gave him a lot of power and created power. And so when you do that, there's a lot of resentment, and you now become a threat to this whole structure, right? And people now, some people use terrorism, but again, this is not the method that people engage in anymore, right? They use the judicial system as an armed wing of white supremacy to destroy black power and black excellence, right? By the election of 1898, black men were prevented from voting to push out. I'm sorry. The day after the 1898 elections, White announced the White Declaration of Independence. They overthrew the Wilmington government, destroyed the printing press, forced out the mayor, and a mob of white men attacked black residents. There were reportedly 60 to 300 black people, killed by this act of domestic terrorism. For over 100 years, the powers that be in Wilmington tried to erase the massacre from its history, right? Until 2000, when the General Assembly established the 1898 Wilmington Race Riot Commission to develop a historical record of the event and to assess the economic impact of the riot on African Americans locally and across the region and state. You know, a lot of people are, at least a lot of people online, they're discussing reparations. And it's something that I'm all for, honestly. I think reparations would be a great thing. And I don't think it should all be in cash payments. I think there are alternative ways that reparations can be doled out, right? But now I'm not sure if that will even be made possible. Um, Not because I don't want it to, just because we've been fighting for it for a long time. I'm not sure if we have the unity or the if we're, you know, together, right? If we are even, yep, okay, I'm reading what y'all are saying. Forgive me, y'all. Brother Ghazi says, "Yep, it was Usher, stepson, killed on jet skis at Lake Lanier." Yep, absolutely. Garbage, garbage, legacy media for sure. I'm not sure if we are fortified enough to even bring an amalgamated complaint to the United States. We're so separate. You know, we're not monolithic, and on that, we should be. At least we should come together the way that we came together in 2008 to vote for Barack Obama. If we could get that kind of support behind reparations, if we could get that kind of cooperation, then reparations just might happen, right? And now I heard the Democrats saying something. It was funny. They're saying they have a reparations agenda that they are now that they are out of office, right? They have this reparations policy or this item that they want to pass. Why didn't you pass it? Why didn't you mention this with Joe Biden? That was my thought process. But yeah, it's wild. So moving right along, the Atlanta massacre in 1906. Like many race massacres, the violence in Atlanta at the turn of the century began with a white woman accusing a black men of rape. Black men of rape, excuse me. On September 22nd, 1906, Atlanta newspaper reported that four white women allegedly they were assaulted by black men, a claim that was completely unfounded. In reality, whites were threatened by the upwardly mobility of black communities in Atlanta, which they believed were taking away their jobs. This bogus report of sexual assault drove as many as 2,000 white men to the streets. The terrorists went into black communities to beat, stab, and shoot any black people in sight. PBS reports a disabled man was chased down and beaten to death. That hadn't changed much. That hadn't changed much. You know, we hear all the time about children, we hear about mentally ill people, right? Being killed by police. And so, you know, not a lot has changed. But notice it says upward mobility of black communities in Atlanta. They believe we're taking away their jobs, right? So there's this bogus report of sexual assault. That's a trend. And that was one of the unfortunate things, right? You know, since they could use any and everything when they felt threatened or when they were threatened by the power of the black excellence, by the power of the black economic dollar, right? They could now scream, oh, rape. They could use their woman. And again, it's still what we see today. It's a sexual deviancy that will be thrown out. This is how, you know, we are taught that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the last trick that the enemy will use will be his woman, right? He will use his woman against us, meaning he will make claims against you with his woman. He will send his woman to thrive in your arms and then uh exhaust your resources, right? But we see where women are now being used. White women, how have they've been used to justify sh- uh, 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 stripping black people of their economic power, right? These are things, these are towns that aren't talked about. And it would be very beneficial because it lets young brothers and sisters know, listen, we were not only just contributors, we weren't just consumers, we weren't just first. We were builders, we were producers, we were owners, right? We were landlords, we were land gods, we were all of these things. But now, jealousy, resentment would cause for erroneous charges to be made and for the United States not to take just action and for a lot of black people to lose their lives and still not get justice, still haven't gotten justice. And you noticed, I meant to say this, I'm gonna go back just a little bit so I can go forward, right? Sankofa, go back and fetch it. Notice in North Carolina, it says Wilmington tried to erase. Y'all see this? Wilmington tried to erase the massacre from its history until 2000 when the General Assembly established the 1898 Wilmington Race Riot Commission. You know, that's something that's uncovered. And somebody's probably saying, well, you don't want to say you didn't really care about them talking about critical race theory. I don't. But what I do care about is what I'm saying is we have to now do the knowledge. We have to do the research on ourselves because I guarantee you, somebody did the knowledge and did the research and brought it to everybody's attention. They made a stink out of it and they finally had to relent. But even if we don't bring it to our to the mainstream, if we want it to be recognized in our local township, our city, wherever, you should still teach your children so that they understand. Listen, we built, this is what happened when we built. We can learn from this. This is the true history because it will now give those little babies confidence, right? They'll understand that this is just a game, right? This is what the state says that we should learn, right? But this is not the true history. This is just something I have to sit through just to, dot an I, cross a T. So yes, in reality, whites were threatened by the upwardly mobile. I read that upwardly mobile, upward mobility of black communities in Atlanta, which they believe were taking away their jobs. This bogus report of sexual assault drove as many as 2,000 white men to the streets. The terrorists went into black communities. Yeah, they beat them down, chased them to death. Communities were destroyed, and the unofficial death toll was up to 100. And again, they didn't even really record the death tolls properly, right? You saw up there um, where they talked about, when you looked at it, it was forensically, it was impossible. I think it was Tulsa, Oklahoma. They tried to say it was 30, but it was impossible. It was more than that. Elaine, Arkansas massacre, 1919. 1919 was the Red Summer, y'all. This was when you saw a whole bunch of massacres. You saw lynchings. You saw a lot of things. It was a lot of white flags hanging at the NAACP those days. They hung a white flag at the NAACP office whenever a person or a man was lynched. In 1919, it's considered the Red Summer because you had massacres, you had lynchings all over the United States, everywhere. People were getting killed, military men, innocent people, but just getting slaughtered. The Encyclopedia of Arkansas calls the Elaine Massacre by far the deadliest racial confrontation in Arkansas history and possibly the bloodiest racial conflict in the history of the United States. Blacks outnumbered whites 10 to 1 and were demanding economic justice, as many of them were forced into sharecropping. A union was created to protect sharecroppers, and by September 1919, there was a union meeting among black workers. Whites showed up to riot. As a result, one white man was shot and killed. Whites convinced themselves there was a threat of a black insurrection and reacted with violence. Hundreds of white men attacked black residents, but many fought back, including black veterans. Sadly, there were reports of over 200 black people, including children, were killed. So see there again, no one was spared. No one was spared during these times, right? Everybody was killed. Everybody. I remember when I first read about Nat Turner, Nat Turner was he was considered a radical Christian. He said he got the sign from the moon. The moon was what moved him to start the rebellion. But if you know anything about the uprising with Nat Turner in Virginia, you know that they were killing women, men, women, and children. They were slitting all of their throats. Nat Turner was not playing. He wasn't. But when you look, they didn't play with us, right? They didn't. No humanity. They gave us no humanity, right? So where no humanity is given, none should be expected. Many who weren't killed were arrested and tortured while in custody. They were forced to confess about an insurrection with 12 men receiving the death penalty. They eventually became known as the Elaine 12. With the help of the NAACP, their case went to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1923, and they were exonerated. This was one of the first times the NAACP won a case in front of the Supreme Court. I think we all know uh, about Rosewood, right? Similar to the Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921, a black community was burned to the ground after a white woman named Fannie Taylor claimed she was assaulted by a black man on January 1st, 1923. The first person killed was Sam Carter, a local blacksmith. He was tortured and his mutilated body was hung from a tree. In the movie with Don Cheadle, Ving Rhames, I think Elise Neal, Esther Rolle, John Voight, you know, you see they depicted whoever the assailant was to be a Mason. And when he went to Sam Carter didn't want to deal with him, but he was a Mason. His son was like, he's a Mason, And he was like, nah, we shouldn't fool with this dude, man. This dude is trouble. And they end up helping him. And the dogs got that scent and took him to Sam Carter. And I want to say they cut his ear off. It was bad. It was real bad. But yeah, Rosewood was another place. Sam Carter was one of many. There are reports that up to 150 black people were killed in Rosewood, Florida. After Rosewood was destroyed, a grand jury and special prosecutor decided there was not enough evidence for prosecution of the white man who killed innocent American citizens. Again, take notice, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that there was no justice. There was no justice for these people, for these terrorists, for these murderers. There was none, none at all. None at all. And I say that because when I think of how people just demand justice for people who have been accused, right? I got to keep going back to that. For people who allegations have been made against. It's like, hang them, kill them without even a speckle of evidence. But again, it's remnant of these lynchings, these lynch mobs, right? We don't care about logic. We don't care about freedom, justice, and equality. The only thing, it was a Negro, and we want blood. Somebody has to pay. In 1997, the late great filmmaker John Singleton famously made the film Rosewood, starring Ving Rhames, based on the massacre. Based on the various examples of violence perpetuated in black communities, Tulsa wasn't a rarity. History reminds us that although not popularly discussed, communities in Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, North Carolina, and so many others were victims of racial violence based on economic anxieties and threats to white womanhood. These massacres are chilling reminders of how white terrorism and black lives consistently uh, these massacres are chilling reminders of how white terrorism of black lives is consistently minimized in history. Now, why did I call it? Why did I call it attack on black excellence? Well, the brothers and sisters in those towns, had created something. They had created excellence. They had created autonomy, right? Were these brothers and sisters degreed, right? Did these brothers and sisters go to, did they go to a university, right? Did these brothers and sisters have Google? No, they did not. What they had was a desire to be economically independent. What they had was a desire for their culture to be preserved. What they had was a desire to be fully free and autonomous. And you have to wonder, is that still one of our desires today? Is that something that we are striving for? Right? Do we still want that? I don't think we do all the time. I heard Smackwater say something. I agree with him. He said, Black people don't want freedom. They want comfortable oppression. He said, y'all want comfortable oppression. He's right. We do. We do. We do. We're not serious about freedom. If we were, we'd be more collectively, we'd be moving a little bit different. Yeah, we'd be moving a whole lot different. We'd be looking to give back. And let me say this, right? Because you're free to criticize Brother Faheem as much as you would like. You could put it in the comments after you watch this. You can make comments. I always check back. I'll answer. But I say this: if we've read where a lot of the white communities, they were resentful because of our economic impact, right? The threat of Black excellence within the field of economy, right? Then what are we doing to enrich ourselves economically, right? I won't even say it's an economic revolution, right? What we are, or what I've been saying is we are we are going back around, right? We are reaching back with brothers and sisters like Wall Street Trapper, with Dr. Boyce Watkins, with Dr. Claude Anderson, with Brother Ben X. These are brothers that are teaching people nation building skills over degrees, skills that'll pay the bills. But also, are we learning? Are we learning financial literacy? Are we emphasizing and highlighting those brothers and sisters who, throughout our history, were financially fortified enough to build? Or are we giving our little kids, you know, $40 million slaves, so to speak, like that book, right? That deals with athletes and how they're really powerless and how they really are just slaves with a high price salary, right? What are you doing with your salary? Are you investing? Are you getting, are you creating investment clubs, right? Are you teaching your babies financial literacy? Do y'all play Monopoly with your children? We live in a capitalist society. You have to be able to understand capitalism, right? In order to accrue some power. I'm not against venture capitalists. I'm not against people utilizing capitalism, just like you utilize education, just like you utilize religion, whatever it is. You can utilize it as a tool to now garner and erect and construct some power. Are we are we doing that? Are we doing that? These are the things, man, that that make me say we're comfortable in our oppression, like smack water. These are the things that make me, agree with Brother Charleston White. Like, hey, man, I'm about to act like I'm a fool on these spaces. Cause y'all, that's what y'all respond to. Y'all don't respond to logic and sense. Y'all don't respond to, something progressive, right? Where you can learn and build something, come together. But yeah, teach the babies these things, y'all. Teach them about power wielders and power yielders. Teach them about those black titans, those black gods that through slavery, through peonage, through Jim Crow, they prevailed, right? And how did they do it? They worked together. They bartered. They were unified, right? They had their own tribunals, right? There's nothing wrong with you having a tribunal and correcting the errors of those within your community. You should do that. We don't really need the police. We can correct ourselves. One thing I always say I respect about the mob is they were a self-contained unit, so to speak. right? I'm not advocating that you guys create a crime syndicate. You couldn't do it like that anyway, right? Because the times wouldn't let you. And what they getting people for them recos and all that good stuff. But there was a code, is what I'm trying to say. And that code would cause for the leaders to say, hey, how are we going to deal with this? What are we going to do now to punish this person who is now putting the collective at stake, who can now be the bad apple to ruin the whole barrel? So I challenge you guys. I challenge you guys to learn about somebody other than who you've been learning about. I challenge you guys to look outside of the mainstream images and events and people, right? If you want to do something different, you have to do something different. That's what Minister Malcolm told me. And it's okay. Read financial literacy books, right? Start book clubs based around these things that will help you, that will help you advance yourself. Once we begin to learn, then we'll be more qualified to earn. Yeah, but it starts with us doing the knowledge and teaching our baby something different than what the mainstream, and not expecting the mainstream to have their best interest at heart or to teach them how to uplift themselves. So I wanted to come on here and speak to the good people about that. Man, it's always a pleasure. Man, I appreciate people coming through here in and out, man. And hopefully you guys will watch it back. Listen, lead with logic, the number 7.com. Lead with logic, the number 7.com. Going over there. Like I said, man, hats, hoodies, and tees. You dig? We have them all. Hats, hoodies, and tees. I appreciate y'all, man. Look, as Mr. Malcolm would always say, look, may we all meet again in the light of understanding. And hopefully you guys have a most positive, productive, and most of all, peaceful rest of your week. Listen, man, peace and love. Thanks for tuning in.